So, imagine a fire that is so intensely hot that it doesn't just, like, boil water or burn wood.
Right. It literally vaporizes solid rock into absolute nothingness.
Exactly, into absolute nothingness. And in our deep dive into today's sermon, we are unpacking how the preacher used that exact physically impossible image.
From an ancient biblical showdown, yeah.
Yeah, to explain something, every single one of us desperately wants. The complete and total deletion of our past mistakes.
It's a stunning concept to try and wrap your head around, honestly.
It really is.
Because normally, when we think about forgiveness, we think about someone just
Just agreeing not to be mad at us anymore.
right, exactly, like a clean slate emotionally. But listening to today's sermon, we heard a radically different framework.
Yeah.
The core argument we heard today was that a mere apology tour doesn't fix a broken world. You actually need a mechanism of total annihilation. Total annihilation.
Yeah. You need a fire that leaves literally no trace of the old reality behind.
I want to get straight into how the sermon built that argument, because it starts in a place that feels, honestly, incredibly jarring.
Oh, for sure.
To understand this consuming fire, the preacher first took us to a moment where one of Jesus's absolute best friends, Peter, gets things spectacularly wrong.
Yeah, we are in Luke chapter 9 here.
Right. And Jesus and his disciples have been living out of each other's pockets for a while. They've seen him feed thousands, heal the sick, calm storms, and Jesus just throws a pop quiz at them.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah. He asks, "Who do the crowd say I am?"
And the disciples, they just start listing the rumors. They tell him some people think he's John the Baptist back from the dead. Others think he's Elijah or, another ancient prophet. But Jesus isn't really interested in the public opinion polls.
No, he pivots.
He pivots and asks them directly, but who do you say I am?
And Peter, who is, let's be real, never short on confidence, steps right up and declares, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God."
Which is the ultimate right answer.
Yeah, Jesus basically gives him a gold star.
Yeah, exactly.
But literally moments after Peter gets this high praise, the whiplash happens. Jesus starts explaining how he is going to be this victorious Christ.
And it's not what they expect.
Not at all. He tells them he has to suffer, be rejected by the religious leaders, be killed, and then rise on the third day.
And that completely shatters the paradigm Peter was operating in.
Totally.
Because in Peter's mind, a Messiah is a conquering king, right? A guy who kicks out the Romans and takes the throne.
Right. A dead Messiah is a failed Messiah.
Exactly. So Peter pulls Jesus aside and actually rebukes him.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. He says, "Never, Lord, this shall never happen to you." He's essentially like laying down the law, telling Jesus that dying is off the table.
And Jesus' response is what genuinely trips me up. He turns to Peter, his closest friend, and says, "Get behind me, Satan."
Yeah, it's intense.
I have to be honest, hearing that in the sermon, I really struggled with it.
It's hard to digest.
Just seems incredibly toxic. I mean, from a modern leadership perspective, calling your right-hand man Satan just because he's trying to protect you from getting killed,
Right.
it seems overly harsh, doesn't it? Why go straight to the nuclear option?
Well, it sounds intensely harsh until you look at the underlying mechanics of what Peter was actually suggesting, which is exactly what the preacher dissected for us today.
Okay, walk me through that.
Why use the specific word Satan? Think back to the Garden of Eden. God told Adam and Eve they would die if they ate the fruit.
Right.
But the serpent whispered to Eve, "You will surely not die."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The sermon pointed out that Peter's words to Jesus, "This shall never happen to you," meaning you will not die, are a perfect, chilling echo of that ancient serpentine lie.
Ah, okay. So it's not that Peter is, like, literally possessed by a demon in that moment.
No, not at all.
It's like, okay, have you ever been in a car where a passenger suddenly grabs the steering wheel because they think they see a pothole?
Yes.
They think they're helping, but they don't realize they're actually steering the entire car off a cliff.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. I mean, Peter thinks he's being a loyal friend, but he has just grabbed the steering wheel of the universe.
Wow.
And is trying to drive it away from the only thing that can save it. Jesus isn't just losing his temper here. He has to violently yank the wheel back.
Because the cross wasn't an unfortunate accident.
No, or a tragic detour. It was the entire point of the mission. By telling Jesus to avoid the cross, Peter was opposing the very will of God.
So Jesus shuts that down immediately.
Instantly.
But then, as the sermon framed it, Jesus has to actually prove why the cross is so inevitable. He has to show them the larger architecture of what is happening.
Right.
And that brings us to an event that happens just 8 days later.
Transfiguration.
Yeah. Jesus takes Peter, James, and John, and they climb up a high mountain to pray.
And, mountains throughout biblical history are places of intense isolation and divine revelation.
You are physically above the noise of the world.
Exactly. The text tells us that as Jesus is praying, his appearance completely changes. His face and his clothes become blindingly white, radiating light.
Just a crazy visual.
And suddenly, he isn't alone. Two figures step out of eternity to stand on the mountain with him. Moses and Elijah.
The absolute heavy hitters of ancient Israel.
Oh, yeah.
But I love how the preacher dug into why these two specific individuals showed up. I mean, we often hear they represent the law and the prophets, which is true.
Right. That's the standard takeaway.
But the sermon highlighted something much stranger and honestly more specific about their resumes. They are considered living witnesses.
Yeah. The circumstances of their exits from the world were completely unique.
Right.
The scriptures describe Elijah being caught up into heaven in a whirlwind and a chariot of fire. He basically bypassed death entirely.
Wild.
And Moses did die, but the text explicitly notes that God buried him and his grave was never found.
Which spawned centuries of tradition regarding his unique state.
Exactly. These aren't just figures from the past. They are representatives of the eternal, living reality of God's kingdom.
And what are they talking about up there? They aren't discussing the weather.
Far from it.
The sermon noted they're discussing Jesus' upcoming departure in Jerusalem. They're basically holding a high-level summit about his impending death and resurrection.
Meanwhile, Peter wakes up, sees this glorious, terrifying vision, and immediately starts babbling.
Just classic Peter.
He offers to build 3 memorial tents, one for Jesus, one for Moses, one for Elijah.
He is trying to domesticate the glory.
That's a great way to say it. He wants to capture the moment, put a roof over it, and keep things exactly as they are.
But God himself interrupts Peter's building plans. A massive cloud envelops the mountain, and a voice booms out, "This is my beloved son, my chosen one. Listen to him."
And when the cloud lifts, the vision is over. Moses is gone. Elijah is gone. Only Jesus is left standing there.
Okay, so here is where my curiosity really piqued while listening to today's sermon.
Okay.
I understand why Moses is at that summit. He gave the Israelites the law, the sacrificial system. It makes total sense he'd be there to discuss the ultimate sacrifice.
Right.
But why Elijah? Out of all the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel, why is this specific guy, Elijah, standing on that mountain talking to Jesus about a bloody cross?
That is the exact mystery the preacher invited us to solve today.
I couldn't wait for the reveal.
To understand the connection, the sermon took us on a massive flashback 800 years deep into the Old Testament.
In the book of 1 Kings.
1 Kings chapter 18. This is the defining moment of Elijah's life.
The showdown on Mount Carmel.
Yes. And to feel the weight of this, you have to understand the catastrophic state of the nation at the time.
It was bad.
Israel has been suffering through a devastating drought for 3 solid years.
3 years.
And this isn't just an unfortunate weather pattern. The king, Ahab, and his wife, Jezebel, have instituted the worship of Baal.
Right, and what was Baal?
He was believed to be the god of storms, rain, and fertility.
The irony is just incredibly thick. You are worshiping the god of rain, and the heavens have been locked shut for 36 months.
Exactly. And the preacher made sure we felt the stakes of that.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and trying to picture it, don't just picture a dry summer.
No.
3 years without rain in an ancient agrarian society means the crops have failed 3 times.
The livestock are dead.
The economy has completely collapsed. People are starving to death. The nation is on the brink of total extinction.
And in the midst of this desperation, Elijah steps up and issues a massive public challenge.
I love this guy's boldness.
He tells King Ahab to gather the entire nation and all 450 prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. He proposes a definitive contest to prove whose God is actually real.
Okay.
They will each build an altar, cut up a bull, and lay it on the wood. But there is one rule. They cannot light the fire themselves.
The God who answers from heaven with fire, he is the true God.
The ultimate high-stakes wager.
And the preacher's description of the Baal prophets was so vivid, the 450 prophets go first. They are dancing around their altar from morning until noon, screaming at the sky, "Baal, answer us!"
But there is nothing.
Nothing. Elijah actually starts mocking them. He says, maybe he's deep in thought, maybe he's busy or traveling, yell louder.
He's taunting them.
So they escalate. They start slashing themselves with swords and spears, bleeding all over the altar, raving in a frenzy until the evening, and still...
Absolute deafening silence.
Yeah.
Then the spotlight turns to Elijah, and the sermon drew our attention to the incredible deliberation in his actions.
He doesn't rush it?
No, he doesn't just throw some wood together. He takes 12 stones, representing the fractured 12 tribes of Israel, and painstakingly rebuilds the ruined altar of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
He arranges the wood, he prepares the sacrifice, but then he gives an order that defies all human logic.
He tells the people to dig a deep trench all the way around the altar.
And then he asks for water.
During a historic 3-year drought, where water is like more precious than gold.
He tells them to take 4 massive jars of water and drench the sacrifice in the wood.
And he makes them do it 3 times.
3 times. That is 12 heavy jars of water soaking the meat, saturating the wood.
And completely flooding the trench.
It is a stunning display of faith. I mean, he is intentionally making it physically impossible for this sacrifice to burn.
He wants zero ambiguity. When the fire comes, no one can say, oh, a stray spark caught the dry kindling.
Exactly.
And this is exactly where I started geeking out. Because the physics of what the preacher detailed next are just mind-blowing.
Tell me about it.
Elijah prays a very simple prayer. Lord, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and turn their hearts back to you.
And then the fire falls.
But as we heard today, it didn't just ignite the wet wood.
No. The biblical text is incredibly specific about what that fire consumed. It says, the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, the dust, and licked up all the water in the trench.
Think about the thermodynamics of that.
It's impossible.
We all know fire evaporating water takes a massive amount of energy. But incinerating stones, vaporizing dust, if you're picturing this, you'd need temperatures like a commercial steel forge thousands of degrees just to melt rock into lava.
Right.
But it didn't melt the stones into a puddle. It consumed them. It erased them from existence.
The preacher emphasized this heavily today. This isn't just combustion. It is the miraculous total annihilation of matter.
There was zero trace of the altar left.
And this brings us to the absolute core of today's deep dive. Why spend so much time analyzing an 800-year-old fire on a mountain?
Right. What's the point?
Because, as the sermon so powerfully revealed, that physically impossible fire on Mount Carmel is the exact theological blueprint for what happens on the cross.
Okay.
That is the reason Elijah was standing on the Mount of Transfiguration talking to Jesus.
Wait. Walk me through that connection. I understand fire burning up an altar, but how does a Roman execution equate to a fire?
Good question.
What's the actual mechanism linking Mount Carmel to Jesus on the cross?
It comes down to the concept of the burnt offering. In the ancient sacrificial system, a burnt offering was entirely consumed by fire. Nothing was held back.
Right.
The preacher explained that Jesus offering himself on the cross was the ultimate final burnt offering. Only this time, the fire wasn't literal flames.
It was spiritual.
The fire was the intense, holy judgment of God and the consuming power of the Holy Spirit.
Oh, I see. So when Jesus is hanging there, the sermon is saying that this divine fire is falling on him. But it's not burning physical wood and stone. It's burning away spiritual realities.
Precisely the point. That fire fell on the cross and completely incinerated the old creation.
Wow.
It burned away the curse that started in the Garden of Eden. It burned away the serpentine lie that Peter had echoed.
It consumed the entire rigid system of the old law.
Yes. Just as the fire in Elijah's day left absolutely nothing behind, no wood, no stone, no dust, the fire of the cross completely annihilated the old broken world.
That reframes the entire Easter story for me.
Doesn't it?
Like the empty tomb isn't just about Jesus coming back to life. The empty tomb is the empty altar.
Oh, that is a brilliant way to put it, yes. The tomb was empty because the physical body of the old world had been completely consumed.
Incredible.
You can't just patch up a broken world, you have to clear the site entirely. The old creation was finished, turned to spiritual ash, so that a completely new reality could emerge.
As the New Testament declares, all things have become new.
Exactly.
And the preacher tied this monumental theological concept directly down to earth today, to our everyday lives, by pointing to the book of Hebrews.
Yeah.
Because that old world was completely consumed by the fire of the cross, God makes an astonishing promise. He says, I will remember their sins and their lawless deeds no more.
No more. It is so vital to understand the mechanism here.
Yeah.
God doesn't just politely ignore our sins.
Right.
He doesn't sweep the dirt under a rug where it still secretly exists. Because of the cross, the dirt has been vaporized.
It's is gone.
The past mistakes have been erased from reality.
Think about what that meant for Peter. Remember how we started this deep dive?
Yeah, Jesus calling him Satan.
Jesus looking him in the eye and calling him Satan. That is a crushing failure. I mean, if I were Peter, I'd carry the shame of that moment to my grave.
Absolutely.
I would be constantly apologizing for it. But because of the cross, even that profound, humiliating mistake was completely burned away.
Peter didn't have to carry the baggage of being the guy who opposed God because that version of his history was consumed in the fire.
He was completely restored because his old self was annihilated.
And that realization is exactly how the preacher brought today's sermon to a close.
It was so powerful.
It shifted from an explanation of history into a deeply empowering call to action for everyone sitting in the room.
Yes, the energy in that conclusion was palpable.
For sure.
The preacher essentially looked out at the congregation and said, if you understand the physics of this grace, if you understand that the divine fire has already consumed the old world, you have no business calling yourself weak.
Right.
You have no business letting your past failures define your present identity.
The sermon actually challenged the listeners to speak this new reality out loud.
I love that part.
To declare, I am perfect in Jesus, I am blessed, I have no curse, my suffering has passed.
It is a radical demand to stop trying to renovate your old broken life and instead step into the truth that the old life is already ash. You are standing on a completely blank slate.
And we heard today that the gathering concluded by taking communion together, which, when you think about it through this lens, is so profound.
Yeah.
It's a physical act. Eating the bread, drinking the cup to anchor you to the physical body of Jesus, the body that was offered up on that ultimate altar to make this total erasure possible.
It was a masterful synthesis of the scriptures today.
Truly.
I mean, the preacher pulled the thread from Peter's failure to grasp the cross, up to the Transfiguration summit with Elijah, back through history to the consuming fire of Mount Carmel, and finally to the empty tomb.
It all pointed to one undeniable truth. God's grace doesn't just cover our mistakes, it consumes them entirely.
It really is a breathtaking perspective to walk away with. And as we wrap up this deep dive into today's sermon, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over as you go about your week.
Yeah.
We've spent this time exploring how that divine fire completely consumed and erased the old world, vaporizing the stones and the dust of our past.
Leaving nothing behind.
So here's the question. What parts of your old self, what specific guilt, what old label, what past failure are you still desperately trying to hold on to, treating it like a solid rock, even though, according to what we heard today, it has already been burned to ash?
A truly challenging question to reflect on.
Until next time, keep diving deep.